Welcome to Peacetime Story, your nightly escape to calm, comfort, and peaceful sleep. Subscribe now and be part of our Peacetime Story family, where every night ends with relaxation and sweet dreams. Now, let's begin tonight's journey. Appointment with Death, Poirot's Deadly Desert Secret.
In the shadowed heart of Petra's rose-red cliffs, a chilling whisper echoes through the ancient stones, a woman's voice calling a name long buried in tragedy. Is it a Nabatean ghost or a mortal cry cloaked in mystery? Hercule Poirot, summoned by a cryptic warning, steps into a family bound by fear and secrets, where every glance hides a motive and the desert itself demands justice. What dark truth lies behind the Boyntons' torment, and will Poirot unravel it before the sands claim their due?
Chapter 1. Whispers in the Wadi. The sun hung low over Petra's rose-red cliffs, a molten orb casting jagged shadows across the Sikh's serpentine walls. Dust motes danced in the slanting light, stirred by a breeze that carried an inexplicable chill, as if the ancient Nabateans still murmured secrets through the carved stone. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes an affront to the desert's grit, paused at the mouth of the narrow gorge. His Malacca cane tapped a rhythm against the earth, a metronome to his racing thoughts. A telegram, cryptic and urgent, had summoned him from a leisurely sojourn in Jerusalem to this remote Jordanian marvel. Danger in the desert, it read, signed by Colonel Carberry, a man whose clipped prose betrayed a military heart uneasy with mysteries. Poirot's little grey cells hummed. The stage was set, the cast unknown, and the curtain of intrigue rising. He adjusted his straw hat, its brim shielding his sharp eyes as he surveyed the scene. Camels snorted nearby, their handlers hawking overpriced trinkets to a smattering of tourists. Beyond, the treasury's facade loomed, its Hellenistic columns a testament to a civilization long swallowed by sand. But it was not the ruins that drew Poirot's gaze. It was the family encamped near a cluster of tamarisks, their voices a discordant symphony against the desert's hush. The Boyntons, he deduced, recognizing the name from Carberry's missive. A matriarch, her brood, and a shadow of dread that clung to them like heat haze. Mrs. Eleanor Boynton sat enthroned on a folding chair, her angular frame draped in severe black linen, a parasol clutched like a scepter. Her eyes, cold as obsidian, scanned her family with the precision of a falcon. Around her orbited her children and stepchildren. Lennox, the eldest, slumped in defeat, his wife Nadine's posture taut with unspoken defiance. Carol, her auburn hair catching the light, fidgeted with a scarf. Raymond, the youngest son, scribbled furiously in a notebook. And Ginevra, the delicate stepdaughter, stared vacantly at the cliffs, as if seeing beyond them. A stranger lingered at the periphery. Jefferson Cope, an American with a diplomat's polish, his smile too eager for Poirot's taste. Mon Dieu, Poirot muttered, stroking his mustache. A tableau vivant, but one that lacks in vie. He approached, his steps deliberate, and his smile a calculated blend of charm and curiosity. The family's chatter stilled as he drew near. Mrs. Boynton's gaze pinned him like a specimen. Monsieur Poirot, I presume? Her voice was a low rasp, each syllable weighted with authority. Colonel Carberry warned us of your, curiosity. Madame, Poirot replied, bowing slightly. I am but a humble traveler, drawn to Petra's wonders, and perhaps to the puzzles of the human heart. His eyes twinkled, disarming yet probing. May I join your repast? Mrs. Boynton's lips thinned, but she gestured to an empty stool. If you must. The picnic was a meager affair. Flatbreads, dates, and a thermos of tea spread on a cloth stained by desert dust. Poirot settled among them, his presence an odd note in their strained harmony. Lennox offered a weak nod, his hands clasped tightly, while Nadine's fingers brushed his arm, a fleeting reassurance. Carol tore at a bread crust, her eyes darting to her mother, then away. Raymond's pen scratched on, oblivious, while Ginevra hummed softly, her gaze lost in the Sikh-shadowed depths. "Petra is magnificent, no?" Poirot ventured, sipping tea that tasted of tin and thyme. "The Nabateans, they carved dreams from stone, but dreams they can become nightmares, can they not?" Nadine's cup paused mid-air. "Nightmares?" she echoed, her voice low but sharp. "This place is, unsettling, like it's watching us." "Nonsense," Mrs. Boynton snapped, her cane thumping the ground. "It's rock and sand, nothing more. You do well to focus on reality, Nadine." Poirot's smile didn't waver, but his eyes catalogued the exchange. The matriarch's control was absolute, yet cracks showed in her dominion. He turned to Ginevra, whose humming had ceased. "And you, mademoiselle? What do you see in these ancient walls?" Ginevra's pale face turned to him, her eyes wide with a childlike intensity. "They whisper," she said softly. "The stones, they tell stories of the dead." A collective unease rippled through the group. Carol laughed, a brittle sound. "Ginny, don't be daft. It's just the wind." But Poirot's attention sharpened. "Whispers, you say? And what do these voices speak of, mademoiselle?" Ginevra's lips parted, but Mrs. Boynton's cane rapped sharply. "Enough of this foolishness. Ginevra, sit up straight. We're here to explore, not indulge fantasies." The moment shattered, but Poirot's mind seized it. Whispers, a word that echoed Carberry's warning of unseen dangers. As the family resumed their meal, he excused himself, ostensibly to admire a nearby frieze. His cane tapped a path toward the Sikh's entrance, where the cliffs narrowed to a slit of sky. There, in the cool shadow, he paused, ears straining. The desert was silent, too silent. Then, faint as a dying breath, it came. A whisperer, sibilant and elusive, weaving through the stone like a ghost's lament. "Monsieur Poirot!" Jefferson Cope's voice broke the spell, his lanky frame striding toward him. "Lost in the scenery, eh? Petra does that to a man." "Indeed, Monsieur Cope," Poirot replied, his tone light but his eyes assessing. "But it is not the scenery that captivates me. Tell me, what brings an American consul to this desolate corner?"
Cope's grin faltered, then recovered. "Oh, a bit of history, a bit of leisure. The Boyntons are old friends. Well, acquaintances. I'm just tagging along." "Friends," Poirot mused, his tone neutral. "And yet I sense a certain tension among them. A family bound by more than blood, perhaps?" Cope's laugh was too loud. "You're a perceptive one, Poirot. Let's just say Mrs. Boynton runs a tight ship, keeps everyone on their toes." "Or under her heel," Poirot murmured, too softly for Cope to hear. He tipped his hat and returned to the group, the whisper lingering in his mind like a half-remembered dream. As noon blazed overhead, the Boyntons packed their picnic, Mrs. Boynton dictating tasks with military precision. Poirot lingered, observing from a distance. Lennox and Nadine exchanged a glance, a silent pact sealed in a heartbeat. Carol's scarf slipped, revealing a bruise on her wrist, quickly concealed. Raymond's notebook vanished into his satchel, his expression guarded. Ginevra trailed behind, her fingers brushing the cliffs as if tracing invisible words. The group retreated to their tents, pitched in a sheltered wadi where acacias offered scant shade. Poirot, claiming a need for solitude, wandered toward a cluster of boulders, his cane probing the earth. There, half buried in sand, he found it, a glint of metal, winking in the sunlight. He knelt, brushing away grit, to reveal a tarnished locket, its surface etched with a single word: Miriam. His fingers closed around it, the cool metal a counterpoint to the desert's heat. A clue, perhaps, or a relic of some forgotten tragedy. The afternoon waned, and Poirot rejoined the Boyntons at their camp. Mrs. Boynton sat apart, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her cane a silent sentinel. The others moved with mechanical efficiency, setting up lanterns and preparing a simple supper. Poirot, ever the genial guest, offered a story of his Belgian youth, drawing a rare smile from Carol and a curious glance from Raymond. But Ginevra's attention remained elsewhere, her eyes tracking unseen shapes in the gathering dusk. As stars pierced the velvet sky, the whisper returned, sharper now, threading through the wadi like a needle through silk. Poirot froze, his tisane cup halfway to his lips. The sound was no mere wind. It carried a cadence, a plea, too faint to decipher, yet heavy with intent. He rose, excusing himself with a murmured apology, and followed the sound to the wadi's edge. There, in the moonlight, a shadow flickered, a trick of light or something more. He stood, motionless, until the whisper faded, leaving only the desert's vast silence. Returning to the camp, Poirot found the Boyntons retiring, their tents glowing like lanterns against the cliffs. Mrs. Boynton's silhouette lingered longest, her form unyielding even in repose. Poirot settled into his own tent, a modest affair lent by Carberry's staff. He opened the locket, its hinge creaking, revealing a faded photograph of a woman with eyes like Ginevra's, her smile a ghost of sorrow. Miriam, he thought, the name a spark in his mind's labyrinth. He sipped his tisane, the herbal warmth of balm to his racing thoughts. The day had woven a tapestry of clues, whispers, a locket, a family bound by fear. Mrs. Boynton's iron grip, the bruised wrist, the notebook's secrets, and Ginevra's haunted gaze all pointed to a drama yet to unfold. The whisper, though, its source eluded him, a thread dangling just beyond reach. Was it the desert's voice, or a mortal cry cloaked in mystery? Poirot closed the locket, tucking it into his waistcoat. The wadi was quiet now, the stars a silent jury above. He reclined, his mind a kaleidoscope of faces and fragments, each piece slotting into place with satisfying precision. The first act was complete, the stage set for revelations to come. Tomorrow he would probe deeper, peeling back the layers of this deserted decree. For now, he allowed himself a moment of contentment, the puzzle's opening gambit, elegantly played.
Chapter 2. The Tyrant's Shadow. The dawn broke over Petra like a shattered amphora, spilling shards of gold across the rose-red cliffs. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of dew-kissed tamarisk, but a tension hung heavier than the morning mist. Hercule Poirot emerged from his tent, his straw hat tilted against the rising sun, his malacca cane gleaming as if polished by the desert itself. The locket, tucked safely in his waistcoat, pressed against his chest, a silent reminder of the previous day's enigma. His little gray cells buzzed, alert to the undercurrents swirling among the Boynton encampment. The whispers in the wadi had faded with the night, but their echo lingered in his mind, a spectral thread weaving through the family's strained tableau. Mrs. Eleanor Boynton presided over breakfast with the austerity of a Bedouin chieftain, her black linen dress absorbing the light. Her children and stepchildren moved around her like planets in a reluctant orbit. Lennox, hollow-eyed, stirred his coffee with mechanical precision. Nadine, his wife, arranged plates with a grace that masked her unease. Carol's fingers fidgeted with a silver bracelet, its links glinting like a chain. Raymond, ever the scribe, hunched over his notebook, his pen a restless sentinel. And Ginevra, pale as moonlight, nibbled at a fig, her gaze drifting to the cliffs as if summoned. Jefferson Cope, the American interloper, hovered at the edges, his smile a polished veneer that failed to reach his eyes.
Poirot, settling onto a camp stool with a cup of bitter tea, observed the scene with the keenness of a falcon. "A fine morning, Madame Boynton," he said, his voice a velvet probe. "The desert, it invigorates the soul, does it not?" Mrs. Boynton's eyes narrowed, her cane resting across her lap like a drawn sword. "It tests the weak," she replied, her tone a blade's edge. "Petra has no patience for folly." Her words landed like stones, and the family stilled. Nadine's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her hands folding a napkin with deliberate care. Poirot's mustache twitched, sensing the fault lines beneath their silence. Today, he knew, would reveal more of the family's fractures, and perhaps the source of the locket's mystery. Mrs. Boynton rose, her cane tapping a decree. "We remain here today," she announced, her voice brooking no dissent. "No wandering into the ruins. The wadis are treacherous, and I'll not have recklessness ruin our plans." A murmur of protest stirred, quickly smothered. Carol's bracelet clinked as her hand clenched. "But the theater is so close," she ventured, her voice soft but edged. "Just a short walk." "Enough." Mrs. Boynton's cane struck the ground, a punctuation mark. "You'll stay where I can see you, all of you." Poirot sipped his tea, his eyes cataloging reactions. Lennox's shoulders sagged, Nadine's jaw set, and Raymond's pen paused mid-stroke. Ginevra, alone, seemed untouched, her fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. Jefferson Cope cleared his throat, stepping forward with a diplomat's ease. "Mrs. Boynton, perhaps a brief excursion. The children could use the distraction." Her glare could have cracked stone. "You're not family, Mr. Cope. Your opinions are not required." Cope retreated, his smile faltering like a candle in the wind. Poirot, sensing an opportunity, rose with a flourish. "Madame, I crave a morning constitutional. The cliffs, they call to me. May I take my leave?" Mrs. Boynton's eyes bored into him, but she nodded curtly. "Stay out of trouble, Monsieur Poirot. The desert is no place for games." With a bow, he departed, his cane tapping a path toward the shadowed wadis. The camp's tension faded behind him, replaced by the desert's vast indifference. The cliffs loomed, their carved facades whispering of ancient lives. And then, faint but unmistakable, the spectral voice returned. Not the mournful plea of yesterday, but a sharper note, a woman's cry laced with urgency. Poirot froze, his ears straining. The sound seemed to emanate from a narrow crevice, half hidden by a tumble of boulders. He approached, his polished shoes scuffing against sand, and peered into the darkness. Nothing but stone and shadow greeted him, yet the whisper lingered, a siren's call pulling him deeper. He marked the spot with a small pile of pebbles and continued his walk, his mind a kaleidoscope of questions. The locket, inscribed with Miriam, suggested a past tragedy, perhaps a lost sister, a forgotten wife. And Mrs. Boynton's iron grip, did it conceal guilt or merely control? His thoughts were interrupted by a rustle behind him. Turning, he found Nadine, her shawl slipping from her shoulders, her eyes wide with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot," she whispered, glancing back toward the camp, "I need to speak with you, alone." He gestured to a flat rock, and they sat, the cliff's shadow cloaking them. "Speak, madame. Poirot, he listens." Nadine's fingers twisted the shawl's fringe. "It's Eleanor, Mrs. Boynton. She's suffocating us. Lennox is a ghost of himself. Carol's breaking, and Raymond, he's planning something. I don't know what, but it scares me." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind sharpened. "And you, madame, what do you fear?" She hesitated, her breath catching. "Jefferson, Mr. Cope, he says we should leave, start anew.
He calls her rule a deserted death decree, says it'll kill us all. But leaving, it's impossible. She'd never allow it. A decree, Poirot mused, the phrase echoing the telegram's warning. And these whispers, madame, have you heard them? Nadine's eyes widened. You've heard them too? I thought it was my imagination. Last night, near the tents, it was like a voice calling my name. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt personal. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. Courage, madame. The desert reveals its secrets in time. She rose, her shawl slipping further, revealing a tense resolve. Thank you, monsieur. Please, don't tell her I spoke to you. As she vanished into the wadi, Poirot's fingers brushed the locket in his pocket. The whispers, the decree, the family's fear, they were threads in a tapestry yet to be woven. He resumed his walk, his cane tracing arcs in the sand, until he reached a secluded overhang. There, half buried in a drift of dust, lay a scrap of paper, its edges frayed. He retrieved it, unfolding it to reveal a single line in a hurried scrawl. She knows too much. No signature, no context, but the ink matched the hue of Raymond's pen.
The sun climbed higher, baking the earth, and Poirot returned to the camp, the paper tucked beside the locket. The Boyntons were scattered now, confined to the wadi's shade. Mrs. Boynton sat beneath a canvas awning, her cane a silent threat. Lennox read a tattered book, his eyes unfocused. Carol braided grass stalks, her movements restless. Raymond sketched in his notebook, his face a mask of concentration. Ginevra sat cross-legged, humming a tune that seemed to echo the desert's whisper. Cope lingered nearby, polishing a pocket watch with unnecessary vigor. Poirot approached Raymond, his smile disarming. "Monsieur, you are an artist, no? May I see your work?" Raymond flinched, clutching the notebook. "It's private," he muttered, his voice low. "Just thoughts." "Of course," Poirot said, retreating with a nod. But his eyes caught the edge of a sketch, a woman's face, her features blurred but hauntingly familiar. Miriam? The question burned, unanswered. Lunch was a silent affair, the family eating under Mrs. Boynton's watchful gaze. Poirot, feigning interest in a guidebook, observed the dynamics. Carol's bracelet glinted again, its clasp loose, revealing another faint bruise. Lennox's hands trembled as he passed the salt. Nadine's eyes met Cope's for a fleeting moment, a spark of conspiracy. Ginevra alone seemed detached, her humming a soft counterpoint to the tension. As the meal ended, Mrs. Boynton rose, her cane rapping a summons. "We rest now. No one leaves the camp. Understood?" A chorus of murmurs answered, but Poirot caught Raymond's clenched fist, the notebook pressed against his chest. The afternoon stretched, the heat oppressive, and Poirot retreated to his tent, the locket and paper heavy in his pocket. He examined the note again, its words a cryptic warning. She knows too much. Mrs. Boynton? Ginevra? Or someone else, hidden in the desert's shadows? The whispers returned as dusk painted the cliffs in hues of amethyst. This time they carried a name, Miriam, faint but unmistakable, rising from the wadi's depths. Poirot stepped outside, his cane forgotten, his senses honed. The sound led him to a cluster of acacias, their branches swaying without wind. Beneath one he found a second clue, a single pearl earring, its luster dulled by sand. It matched a locket's era, its curve suggesting a woman's adornment. He pocketed it, his mind racing. Returning to the camp, he found the Boyntons gathered around the lantern, their faces etched with fatigue. Mrs. Boynton's eyes met his, a challenge unspoken.
"You wander much, Monsieur Poirot. Find anything of interest?" "Only the desert's beauty, madame, and perhaps a trinket or two lost to time." Her gaze lingered, probing, but she turned away, dismissing the group to their tents. Poirot lingered, watching Ginevra pause at the wadi's edge, her silhouette fragile against the cliffs. She whispered something, too soft to hear, and vanished into her tent. In his own tent, Poirot lit a candle, its flame dancing on the locket, the note, and the earring. The day had deepened the mystery, Nadine's plea, Raymond's secrets, Carol's bruises, and the whispers calling a name from the past. Mrs. Boynton's tyranny was a palpable force, but the true danger lay elsewhere, veiled in the desert's heart. He sipped his tisane, its warmth grounding him. The second act was complete, the stage lit with new clues, each a step toward unraveling the tyrant's shadow. Tomorrow he would press harder, the whispers guiding him like stars in the desert night.
Chapter 3. Echoes of the Unseen. The desert dawn painted Petra's cliffs in strokes of amber and rose, the air sharp with the promise of heat. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the Boynton encampment, his straw hat casting a shadow like a sentinel. His malacca cane rested lightly in his hand, its tip grazing the sand as he surveyed the waking wadi. The locket, note, and pearl earring weighed heavy in his waistcoat, each a fragment of a puzzle that grew more intricate with each passing hour. The whispers of the previous day, calling Miriam, had faded into the night silence, but their echo lingered in his little gray cells, a melody of mystery that demanded resolution. Today, he sensed, the desert would yield more secrets, and the Boyntons' carefully guarded facades would crack further under its relentless gaze. The camp stirred, the clatter of tin cups and the rustle of canvas breaking the stillness. Mrs. Eleanor Boynton emerged from her tent, her black linen dress a stark contrast to the morning's plough. Her cane, an extension of her will, tapped a rhythm as she surveyed her family with the precision of a general. Lennox, pale and withdrawn, adjusted a folding table. Nadine, her movements brisk, poured tea with a forced calm. Carol, her silver bracelet glinting, sorted provisions with restless energy. Raymond, his notebook tucked under his arm, avoided his mother's gaze, and Ginevra, fragile as a desert bloom, sat on a rug, her eyes fixed on the distant theater's carved silhouette. Jefferson Cope lingered nearby, his polished shoes scuffed by sand, his smile a mask that faltered under scrutiny. Poirot approached, his demeanor genial, but his eyes sharp. "Bonjour, Madame Boynton," he said, bowing slightly. "The theater beckons today, no? A marvel of Nabatean ingenuity." Mrs. Boynton's lips thinned. "We go where I decide, Monsieur Poirot. The theater is too far, too exposed. We'll explore the lower wadis instead." A ripple of discontent passed through the family, but none dared voice it. Carol's fingers tightened on a sack of dates, and Raymond's jaw clenched. Poirot noted their restraint, his mind cataloguing the unspoken rebellion. "As you wish, madame," he said, his tone light. "The wadis, they hold their own mysteries." Breakfast was a tense affair, the family eating in near silence under Mrs. Boynton's watchful eye. Poirot, sipping tea that tasted of dust and metal, observed the dynamics. Ginevra's gaze drifted to the cliffs, her lips moving silently, as if in conversation with unseen companions. Nadine's hand brushed Lennox's, a fleeting gesture of solidarity. Carol, attempting levity, complimented the tea, earning a withering glance from Mrs. Boynton. The air crackled with suppressed words, and Poirot sensed an opportunity. As the family prepared to depart for the wadis, Poirot lingered near Ginevra, who knelt to tie a sandal, her movements slow. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "you seem attuned to Petra's spirit. Do the stones speak to you today?" Her eyes, wide and luminous, met his. "They never stop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Last night I saw her, a woman in white, standing by the theater. She said we're cursed, that the desert demands a price." Poirot's mustache twitched, his interest piqued. "A woman in white, and what price does she demand?" Ginevra's fingers twisted a lock of hair. "She didn't say, but her eyes, they were so sad, like she's trapped here. She called me by name." Before Poirot could probe further, Mrs. Boynton's cane rapped sharply. "Ginevra, no dawdling. We move now." The group set out, their path winding through a labyrinth of sandstone cliffs, the air thick with heat and silence. Poirot trailed behind, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, his eyes scanning the terrain. The wadis were a maze of shadows and stone, their walls etched with faint Nabatean carvings, spirals and eyes that seemed to watch. The whispers returned, softer now, a collective murmur weaving through the air like threads of mist. They were not the singular cry of Miriam, but a collective murmur rising and falling with the breeze. At the theater's vast amphitheater, the group paused, its tiered seats carved into the cliff like a giant staircase. Mrs. Boynton settled on a stone bench, her cane planted firmly, while the others fanned out, exploring the space with varying degrees of reluctance. Poirot, feigning interest in a weathered inscription, kept Ginevra in his peripheral vision. She wandered toward a shadowed alcove, her steps hesitant, as if drawn by an unseen hand. Suddenly, a shout broke the stillness. Lennox, his voice raw with anger, confronting his mother near the stage edge. "You can't keep us chained forever," he snapped, his fists clenched. "This place, it's driving us mad." Mrs. Boynton's cane struck the ground, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You'll do as I say, Lennox. You always have." Nadine stepped between them, her voice low but firm. "Enough, both of you. This isn't the place." Poirot, sensing a fracture, approached with a disarming smile. "Mon Dieu, the acoustics here are remarkable, non? Even whispers carry far." Lennox turned away, his shoulders hunched, while Mrs. Boynton's gaze pinned Poirot like a blade. "Mind your own affairs, Monsieur Poirot."
But the moment was shattered by a cry from Ginevra, who stumbled from the alcove, her face pale. "She's here," she gasped, pointing to the shadows. "The woman in white. She spoke to me." The family froze, their eyes darting to the alcove. Poirot moved swiftly, his cane forgotten, and peered into the darkness. Nothing but stone greeted him, yet the air felt charged, the whispers swelling into a mournful chorus. He turned to Ginevra, his voice gentle. "What did she say, mademoiselle?" "She said, 'Break the chain,'" Ginevra whispered, tears streaking her face. "She said, 'It's the only way.'" Dr. Theodore Girard, a French physician traveling with the group, stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Ginevra, you're overwrought. The heat, the isolation. It's playing tricks on your mind." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps, docteur, the desert reveals truths we are not ready to hear." Girard scoffed, but his unease was palpable.
Mrs. Boynton rose, her cane a thunderclap. "Enough of this nonsense. We return to the Waddies, now." As the group retraced their steps, Poirot lingered, his gaze sweeping the theater's expanse. The whispers followed, guiding him to a narrow crevice near the alcove. There, etched on the stone, he found a series of faint symbols, spirals and crosses, half erased by time. Beside them, a single word: atonement. His fingers traced the carving, the stone cool against his skin. A clue or a relic of ancient rites? He committed it to memory, his mind weaving connections between Ginevra's visions, the locket's Miriam, and the note's cryptic warning. The Waddies offered little respite, the heat now a palpable weight. The Boyntons moved in silence, their steps heavy with unspoken grievances. Poirot, walking beside Carol, noted her bracelet's loose clasp, its links catching the light. "A fine piece, mademoiselle. A family heirloom." Her hand covered it instinctively. "It was my mother's. Before... everything." "Everything?" Poirot prompted, his tone gentle. She shook her head, quickening her pace. "Nothing. Forget I said anything." But Poirot did not forget. The bruise on her wrist, glimpsed yesterday, gnawed at him. Abuse or accident? And how did it connect to the whispers, the visions, the relics? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden gust, a sandstorm brewing on the horizon, its ochre veil obscuring the cliffs. Mrs. Boynton halted, her cane raised like a standard. "Back to camp," she barked. "This storm will bury the careless." The group hastened, but the storm descended with a fury, sand stinging like needles. Poirot, his hat clutched tightly, guided Carol, who stumbled in the chaos. "Courage, mademoiselle. Poirot has faced worse tempests in Ostend." She managed a weak smile, clinging to his arm as they reached the Waddi's shelter. The storm raged, forcing the family into a cramped cave, its walls etched with more Nabatean symbols, eyes and hands, watching and reaching. The whispers, muffled by the storm, seemed to emanate from within, a chorus of ancient voices. Poirot, back to the stone, observed the Boyntons' faces in the dim light. Lennox's resignation, Nadine's defiance, Raymond's guarded intensity, Ginevra's fear, and Mrs. Boynton's unyielding calm. As the storm abated, Poirot stepped outside, his eyes scanning the sand-swept ground. There, half buried, lay a small leather pouch, its stitching frayed. He retrieved it, finding inside a single vial, its label faded but legible. Belladonna. A poison or a medicine? He pocketed it, his mind racing. Dr. Gerard, emerging from the cave, caught his eye. "You find treasures everywhere, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his tone light but probing. "The desert is generous to those who look," Poirot replied, his smile enigmatic. The group returned to camp as dusk fell, the cliffs glowing like embers. Mrs. Boynton retired to her tent, her cane's rhythm a fading echo. The others lingered, their faces etched with exhaustion. Poirot, declining supper, retreated to his tent, the vial, locket, note, and earring spread before him. The day had unveiled new layers, Ginevra's visions, the theater's carvings, Carol's cryptic words, and the storm's unexpected gift. The whispers, now tied to atonement, suggested a deeper truth, a curse, perhaps, or a family's buried sin. He sipped his tisane, its warmth grounding him. The Boyntons were a puzzle of fear and secrets, Mrs. Boynton's tyranny the keystone. But the woman in white, the whispers, the relics, they pointed to a past that refused to stay buried.
The third act was complete, the stage littered with clues, each a step toward the desert's unseen truth. Tomorrow, Poirot would probe deeper, the echoes guiding him through the shadows. Chapter 4. Veils of Deception. The morning sun draped Petra's cliffs in a golden shroud, its light filtering through the wadi's tamarisk branches like a celestial loom. Hercule Poirot stood at the camp's edge, his straw hat tilted to shield his eyes, his malacca cane planted firmly in the sand. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and anticipation, the desert's pulse quickening as if sensing the drama unfolding within its embrace. His waistcoat pocket held a growing collection of clues: the locket inscribed with Miriam, the cryptic note, the pearl earring, and the belladonna vial, each a piece of a mosaic that shimmered just beyond comprehension. The whispers, Ginevra's visions, and Mrs. Boynton's iron rule wove a tapestry of secrets, and today, Poirot knew, the threads would tighten, revealing patterns hidden in the desert's heart. The Boynton camp stirred with reluctant energy, the clatter of tin and canvas a stark contrast to the cliff's eternal silence. Mrs. Eleanor Boynton presided over the morning meal, her black linen dress absorbing the light like a void. Her cane rested across her knees, a silent decree of control. Lennox, his eyes shadowed, poured coffee with trembling hands. Nadine arranged bread with mechanical precision, her gaze darting to the horizon. Carol's silver bracelet glinted as she folded napkins, her fingers betraying a nervous rhythm. Raymond clutched his notebook, its pages a shield against his mother's scrutiny, and Ginevra, pale and ethereal, sat apart, her eyes tracing invisible shapes in the air. Jefferson Cope hovered nearby, his American charm fraying at the edges, his polished shoes dusted with sand. Poirot approached, his smile a calculated blend of warmth and curiosity. "Bonjour, Madame Boynton," he said, bowing slightly. "The monastery awaits us today, non? Its heights promise both beauty and revelation." Mrs. Boynton's eyes narrowed, her cane tapping once. "The monastery is a foolish climb," she declared. "We'll explore the colonnaded street instead, closer, safer." A murmur of frustration rippled through the family, quickly stifled. Carol's bracelet clinked as her hand tightened, and Raymond's pen scratched a furious note. Poirot noted their restraint, his little gray cells humming. "As you wish, madame," he said, his tone light. "The street, it tells stories of empires past, and perhaps present." Breakfast was a strained ritual, the family eating under Mrs. Boynton's unyielding gaze. Poirot, sipping tea that tasted of tin and thyme, observed the dynamics. Ginevra's fingers twisted a blade of grass, her lips moving silently as if reciting a forgotten prayer. Nadine's hand brushed Lennox, a fleeting anchor in their shared storm. Cope, attempting levity, complimented the dates, earning a curt nod from Mrs. Boynton. The air thrummed with unspoken words, and Poirot sensed a fracture widening. As the group prepared to depart, Ginevra lingered, her sandal catching on a tent peg. Poirot, seizing the moment, knelt beside her. "Mademoiselle, your visions, they grow stronger, non? What does the desert whisper today?" Her eyes wide with fear met his. "She's angry," Ginevra murmured, "the woman in white. She was at the cave last night, pointing to the cliffs. She said, 'The veil must fall.'" Poirot's mustache twitched, his mind seizing the phrase. "A veil, you say, and whose truth does it conceal?" Ginevra shook her head, her voice a whisper. "I don't know, but she's watching us, always watching." Mrs. Boynton's cane rapped sharply. "Ginevra, no lingering. We move now." The group set out, their path winding toward the colonnaded street, its ancient paving stones worn smooth by time. Poirot trailed behind, his cane tapping a steady rhythm, his eyes scanning the terrain. The cliffs loomed, their facades carved with faded friezes, merchants, camels, gods long forgotten. The whispers returned, not the mournful chorus of yesterday, but a single piercing note, a woman's voice laced with accusation. They seemed to rise from a shadowed alcove near the street's end, where a crumbling arch framed the sky. Poirot paused, his ears straining. The voice called a name, not Miriam this time, but Eleanor. His heart quickened. Was it a trick of the wind, or a deeper truth breaking through? He marked the spot with a small stone, and continued, his mind a whirl of connections. At the colonnaded street, the Boyntons spread out, their movements constrained by Mrs. Boynton's watchful eye. She settled on a stone bench, her cane a sentinel, while the others explored the ruins with varying degrees of reluctance. Poirot, feigning interest in a toppled column, kept Ginevra in sight. She wandered toward a narrow side path, her steps hesitant, as if drawn by an unseen force. Suddenly, a cry shattered the stillness. Carol, her voice sharp with panic. "Ginevra's gone," she shouted, pointing to the path. "She was right there, and now she's vanished." The family froze, their eyes darting to the cliffs. Mrs. Boynton rose, her cane striking the ground. "Find her," she commanded, her voice cold as stone. Poirot took charge, his voice calm but firm. "Monsieur Gerard, Monsieur Cope, assist me. We search the path. The rest, stay with Madame." Dr. Gerard, his brow furrowed, nodded, while Cope's smile vanished, replaced by a grim determination. The three men followed the path, its twists leading deeper into the cliffs. The whispers grew louder, a chorus now, guiding them to a hidden alcove where Ginevra crouched, her face buried in her hands. "Ginevra!" Poirot knelt beside her, his tone gentle. "What has happened, mademoiselle?" She looked up, her eyes wild. "She was here, the woman in white. She said I must end it, that it's my duty. She called it a haunting decree."
Poirot's mind raced. A decree? And what must you end? Ginevra's voice trembled. "The pain. She said it's in the blood. In the family. I don't understand, but I'm scared." Dr. Gerard placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soothing. "It's the heat, Ginevra. Hallucinations. Let's get you back." But Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps, Docteur, the desert speaks truths we cannot ignore." He helped Ginevra to her feet, his cane steadying her as they returned to the group. The family gathered around, their relief tinged with tension. Mrs. Boynton's gaze bored into Ginevra, her cane tapping a slow rhythm. "Foolish girl, you'll bring ruin on us all." Nadine stepped forward, her voice sharp. "She's not well, Eleanor. Leave her be." Mrs. Boynton's cane rose, then fell, her eyes flashing. But before she could speak, a shadow passed over her face, and she swayed, clutching her chest. The family gasped, and Poirot moved swiftly, easing her onto the bench. "Madame, you are unwell. Allow me." He retrieved a vial of smelling salts from his pocket, waving it beneath her nose. Her eyes fluttered open, her breath ragged. "I'm fine," she snapped, pushing him away. "Just the heat." But Poirot's gaze lingered, noting the pallor beneath her stern facade. "Of course, madame, but the desert, it tests us all." As the group prepared to return to camp, Poirot lingered, his eyes scanning the alcove where Ginevra had hidden. There, half buried in the sand, he found a small brass key,
its surface etched with a spiral matching the theater's carvings. He pocketed it, his mind weaving connections between Ginevra's visions, the whispers calling Eleanor, and the relics accumulating in his possession. The return to camp was silent, the cliffs casting long shadows as the sun dipped. Mrs. Boynton walked unaided, her cane a defiant rhythm, but her step faltered slightly, unnoticed by all but Poirot. At the camp, the family dispersed, their faces etched with exhaustion. Poirot, declining lunch, approached Raymond, who sat alone, his notebook open to a page of hurried sketches, cliffs, eyes, a woman's silhouette. "Monsieur Raymond," Poirot said, his voice soft, "your art captures the desert spirit. May I ask what inspires you?" Raymond's hand covered the page, his eyes guarded. "Just impressions. This place gets under your skin." Poirot nodded, his smile disarming. "And perhaps it reveals what we hide, no?" Raymond's jaw tightened, and he closed the notebook. "I don't know what you mean." As dusk fell, the whispers returned, sharper now, a woman's weaving through the wadi. Poirot followed the sound to a secluded overhang, where he found a tattered shawl, its fabric embroidered with the same spiral as the key. He tucked it into his coat, his mind racing. The shawl, the key, the vial, each clue pointed to a past entwined with the Boyntons' present. Dinner was a tense affair, the family eating under lantern light. Mrs. Boynton's gaze was unrelenting, but her hand trembled as she lifted her cup. Poirot, observing from the sidelines, caught a glance between Nadine and Cope, a flicker of conspiracy, quickly concealed. Carol's bracelet slipped, revealing another bruise, darker than before. Ginevra hummed softly, her eyes distant, while Lennox stared into the fire, his face a mask of despair. As the family retired, Poirot lingered, his cane tracing arcs in the sand. He approached the Dr. Gerard, who was packing his medical kit. "Docteur, a question. Belladonna, its uses are many, no? Medicine or poison?" Gerard's hands paused, his eyes narrowing. "Both, Monsieur Poirot. In small doses, it treats pain. In large, it kills. Why do you ask?" Poirot smiled, his tone light. "The desert, it inspires curiosity." In his tent, Poirot spread his clues before him, the locket, note, earring, vial, key, and shawl. The day had unveiled new layers. Ginevra's haunting decree, Mrs. Boynton's health faltering, the whispers naming Eleanor, and the relics tying past to present. The family's fear was palpable, Mrs. Boynton's control a fragile veneer over a deeper truth. The fourth act was complete, the stage set with veils of deception waiting to fall. Tomorrow, Poirot would press harder, the desert secrets unraveling under his relentless gaze.
Chapter 5. The Decree Unfurls. Twilight draped Petra's rose-red cliffs in a veil of indigo, the desert exhaling a cool breath that stirred the tamarisk branches. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of the Boynton encampment, his straw hat resting on a campstool, his malacca cane gleaming in the fading light. The air thrummed with an unspoken tension, as if the ancient stones held their breath, awaiting the next act in a drama woven from secrets and shadows. His waistcoat pocket was heavy with clues, the locket inscribed with Miriam, the cryptic note, the pearl earring, the belladonna vial, the brass key, and the embroidered shawl, each a fragment of a puzzle that pulsed with urgency. The whispers, now a constant undercurrent, had named Eleanor yesterday, and Ginevra's visions of a haunting decree hinted at a truth clawing to surface. Tonight Poirot sensed
the desert would force a reckoning, and the Boyntons' fragile unity would fray under its weight. The camp glowed with lantern light, the clatter of tin plates a stark contrapoint to the wadi's hush. Mrs. Eleanor Boynton sat enthroned in her folding chair, her black linen dress a silhouette of unyielding authority. Her cane, propped against her knee, seemed to pulse with her will. Lennox, his eyes sunken, served tea with mechanical precision. Nadine, her movements taut, arranged a meagre supper of flatbread and olives. Carol's silvered bracelet glinted as she lit lanterns, her fingers trembling. Raymond, his notebook a constant companion, scribbled with feverish intensity, and Ginevra, ethereal and distant, traced patterns in the sand, her hum a soft echo of the desert's whispers. Jefferson Cope lingered at the periphery, his polished demeanor cracking, his eyes darting at Nadine with unguarded longing. A new figure joined the tableau, Sarah King, a young archaeologist's niece, her sharp gaze and quiet confidence a fresh note in the strained symphony. Poirot approached, his smile a calculated blend of charm and scrutiny. "Bonsoir, Madame Boynton," he said, bowing slightly. "The desert night, it is a canvas for truths, non?" Madame Boynton's eyes, cold as obsidian, met his. "Truths are dangerous, Monsieur Poirot," she replied, her voice a low rasp. "They disrupt order." "Order," Poirot mused, settling onto a stool, "is but a mask for chaos, madame, and the desert, it loves to unmask." Her lips thinned, but she said nothing, her cane tapping once. The family ate in silence, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Poirot sipped his tea, its bitterness a mirror to the camp's mood. Sarah, seated beside Carol, broke the tension with a question. "Monsieur Poirot, have you seen the royal tombs at dusk? They're breathtaking." "Indeed, Mademoiselle King," Poirot replied, his eyes noting her curiosity. "But it is the human heart that holds the true wonders and perils." As supper ended, Mrs. Boynton rose, her cane a thunderclap. "Tonight we sever ties," she declared, her voice slicing through the dusk. "No more letters, no more visitors. We are a family, complete in ourselves. Defy me, and you'll regret it." The words landed like a lash. Raymond's pen snapped in his hand, ink staining his fingers. "You can't mean that," he said, his voice raw. "We're not prisoners." Mrs. Boynton's cane struck the ground. "You are what I say you are, Raymond. All of you." Nadine's eyes flashed, but she held her tongue. Carol's bracelet clinked as a hand clenched, and Ginevra's hum faltered. Sarah, an outsider, yet drawn into the fray, spoke softly. "Mrs. Boynton, isolation breeds despair. Surely you see that." Mrs. Boynton's gaze turned on her, venomous. "You know nothing of family, girl. Keep your opinions to yourself." Poirot, sensing a fracture, rose with a flourish. "Madame, I crave a moment's solitude to admire the stars. May I take my leave?" Her eyes bored into him, but she nodded curtly. "Stay close, monsieur. The desert is treacherous at night." Poirot wandered towards the wadi's edge, his cane tapping a path through the sand. The whispers returned, sharper now, a woman's voice weaving through the cliffs, calling Eleanor with a tone of accusation. He followed the sound to a secluded overhang, where the air felt charged, as if the stones themselves pulsed with intent. There, glinting in the moonlight, he found a small silver ring, its band etched with a spiral matching the shawl's embroidery. He pocketed it, his mind racing. Another relic, another thread in the tapestry of Miriam. Returning to the camp, he found the family gathered round a central fire, their faces etched with defiance and fear. Mrs. Boynton stood apart, her cane a silent sentinel. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the camp's edge, a figure in white, veiled and ethereal, moving with ghostly grace. Ginevra gasped, pointing. "It's her, the woman in white!" The family froze, their eyes locked on the apparition. It paused, its veil fluttering, and raised a hand pointing at Mrs. Boynton. A voice, faint but piercing, echoed through the wadi.
The decree is yours, Eleanor. Break it or be broken. Chaos erupted. Lennox lunged forward, shouting, "Who's there?" Nadine pulled him back, her face pale. Carol clutched Sarah's arm, her bracelet falling to the sand. Raymond dropped his notebook, its pages scattering. Mrs. Boynton's cane struck the ground, her voice a roar. "Enough of this madness! It's a trick!" But the figure vanished into the cliffs, the whispers fading with it. Poirot, his heart pounding, moved swiftly, retrieving a scrap of white fabric caught on a tamarisk branch. It matched the shawl's texture, its edge torn as if ripped in haste. He tucked it away, his mind a whirl of connections. "Mon vieux," he murmured, addressing the group, "the desert plays its games, but Poirot he sees through veils." Mrs. Boynton's eyes blazed. "You see nothing, monsieur. This is nonsense, and I won't have it disrupt us." But the disruption was palpable. The family dispersed, their steps heavy with unease. Poirot, seizing the moment, approached Jefferson Cope, who lingered by the fire, his face drawn. "Monsieur Cope," Poirot said softly, "you are a man of the world. Tell me, what do you make of this decree?" Cope's smile was brittle. "It's her, Eleanor. She's trapped them all, body and soul. I told Nadine to leave, to break free, but she's terrified, calls it a deserted death decree."
Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, monsieur? What do you seek in this family's drama?" Cope's hand tightened on his pocket watch. "Just helping a friend, Poirot, nothing more." But Poirot's gaze lingered, sensing layers beneath the diplomat's polish. As Cope retreated, Poirot turned to Sarah, who stood apart, her eyes scanning the cliffs. "Mademoiselle King, you are new to this tableau. What do you see?" Sarah's voice was steady. "A family breaking under pressure. Eleanor's control is absolute, but it's cracking. That figure, it wasn't a ghost. Someone's playing a game." Poirot nodded, his smile enigmatic. "A game, or a truth unveiled. Merci, mademoiselle." As night deepened, the whispers returned, now a chorus of voices, weaving a tapestry of sorrow and accusation. Poirot followed the sound to a secluded crevice, where he found a hidden niche, its stone worn smooth. Inside, wrapped in a scrap of linen, lay a small gramophone needle, its tip glinting in the moonlight. His heart quickened. A needle suggested a machine, a contrivance to amplify the whispers. Was the woman in white a mortal hand, cloaking her intent in spectral guise? He returned to the camp, the needle joining his collection of clues. The family had retired, their tents glowing like lanterns against the cliffs. Mrs. Boynton's silhouette lingered longest, her form unyielding even in repose. Poirot, declining a final cup of tea, approached Dr. Girard, who was checking his medical kit by lantern light. "Docteur," Poirot said, his voice low, "a question. Your kit, it is complete, non?" Girard's hands paused, his eyes narrowing. "Why do you ask, Monsieur Poirot?" Poirot's smile was disarming. "Curiosity, docteur. The desert, it inspires questions." But as Girard opened his kit, his face paled. A vial's missing. Digitalis, for heart conditions. It was here this morning. Poirot's mustache twitched. A loss or a theft? The desert will tell. In his tent, Poirot spread his clues before him. The locket, note, earring, vial, key, shawl, ring, fabric, and needle. The day had unveiled a new act, Mrs. Boynton's ultimatum, the apparition's decree, Sarah's insight, and the stolen digitalis. The whispers, now tied to a possible gramophone, suggested a calculated ruse, but whose hand guided it? The family's fear was a tangible force, Mrs. Boynton's control a brittle facade over a deeper truth. He sipped his tisane, its warmth grounding him. The fifth act was complete, the stage lit with veils of deception falling away. The woman in white, the missing vial, the needle, all pointed to a mortal agency, a plan to shatter the Boyntons' chains. Tomorrow, Poirot would confront the shadows, the desert's decree unfurling under his relentless gaze.
Chapter 6: The Desert's Final Verdict. The pre-dawn hush over Petra was profound, a velvet silence broken only by the faint rustle of tamarisk leaves and the distant cry of a nightjar. Hercule Poirot stood at the wadi's edge, his straw hat resting on a nearby rock, his Malacca cane planted in the sand like a standard. The cliffs, bathed in the first whispers of light, loomed as silent witnesses to a drama poised to culminate. His waistcoat pocket brimmed with clues. The locket inscribed with Miriam, the cryptic note, the pearl earring, the belladonna vial, the brass key, the embroidered shawl, the silver ring, the torn fabric, and the gramophone needle. Each a thread in a tapestry now taut with revelation. The whispers, the apparitions, and Mrs. Boynton's iron decree had woven a mystery that demanded resolution. Today, Poirot knew, the desert would deliver its final verdict, and the Boynton secrets would stand naked under its unforgiving gaze. The camp stirred as dawn's first rays kissed the cliffs, painting them in hues of rose and gold. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of dew and dust, but a pall of dread hung heavy. Poirot's little gray cells thrummed, alert to the undercurrent swirling among the tents. As he approached, a cry shattered the stillness. Nadine, her voice raw with panic, emerging from Mrs. Boynton's tent. "She's dead," she gasped, her hands trembling. "Eleanor, she's gone!" The family converged, their faces a mosaic of shock and relief. Lennox stumbled forward, his eyes wide. Carol's bracelet clinked as she clutched Sarah King's arm. Raymond's notebook slipped from his grasp, pages fluttering. Ginevra, pale as moonlight, stood frozen, her hum silenced. And Jefferson Cope, his polish shattered, stared at the tent with unmasked dread. Sarah, the archaeologist's niece, stepped forward, her calm a beacon in the chaos. "Monsieur Poirot, we need you," she said, her voice steady. Poirot entered the tent, his cane forgotten, his senses honed. Mrs. Boynton lay on her cot, her black linen dress pristine, her face serene in death, a faint smile curving her lips as if mocking the desert itself. Her cane rested beside her, its tip stained with a faint smear of red. Sand or blood? Poirot kneeled, his eyes scanning her form. No visible wounds, no signs of struggle, but a small puncture mark on her wrist caught his attention, its edges faintly bruised. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his mind racing. "The desert delivers its decree." Dr. Theodore Gerard, summoned from his tent, examined the body, his brow furrowed. "No obvious cause," he said, his voice tight. "Possibly heart failure, but that mark, it suggests an injection." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "An injection, doctor, perhaps of digitalis stolen from your kit." Gerard paled, his hands clenching. "You suspect foul play, monsieur." "I suspect nothing," Poirot replied, his tone measured. "I observe, and the truth reveals itself." He stepped outside, addressing the gathered family. "Mes amis, remain here. Poirot will uncover the desert's secrets. Mademoiselle King, assist me, s'il vous plaît." Sarah nodded, her sharp gaze meeting his. Together they searched the tent, finding a small syringe hidden beneath a folded blanket, its barrel empty, but faintly scented with a bitter tang. Poirot pocketed it, his collection of clues now complete. The family watched, their silence a fragile dam against a flood of accusations. Poirot gathered them at the camp center,
the cliffs towering like jury. "Madame Boynton is dead," he began, his voice calm but commanding. "But this is no accident. A syringe, a stolen vial, a puncture mark. These speak of intent. Let us unravel this deserted death decree." Lennox's voice broke the silence, hoarse with grief. "She was cruel, but who would kill her? We were all here." "Were you?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Let us examine the alibis. Monsieur Lennox, you were seen near the tents at midnight, yes?" Lennox nodded, his hands trembling. "I couldn't sleep. I walked to clear my head." "And you, Madame Nadine?" Poirot turned to her. "You spoke of breaking free. Did you act?" Nadine's eyes flashed. "I hated her control, but I didn't kill her. I was with Lennox all night." Poirot's gaze shifted to Carol, whose bracelet glinted in the rising sun. "Mademoiselle, your bruises, they tell a story of pain. Did you seek to end it?" Carol covered her wrist, her voice shaking. "She hurt us, yes, but I couldn't. I wouldn't." Raymond stepped forward, his notebook clutched tightly. "Stop this, Poirot. You're twisting everything. We're victims, not murderers." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "And you, Monsieur Raymond, with your sketches and secrets, what do they conceal?" Ginevra's voice, soft but piercing, cut through. "It was her, the woman in white. She said the decree must end. I saw her last night, pointing at the tent." Sarah frowned, her voice sharp. "Ginevra, there's no ghost. Someone's manipulating us." Poirot nodded, his cane tapping a slow rhythm. "Precisely, Mademoiselle King. The woman in white is no spirit, but a ruse. Allow me to demonstrate." He led them to a secluded crevice near the camp, where he uncovered a hidden gramophone, its horn concealed by a draped shawl. The needle from his pocket fit perfectly. "The whispers," he said, "were amplified by this device hidden in the cliffs. A voice recorded, perhaps, to sow fear."
Cope's face drained of color. "That's impossible. Who would do such a thing?" Poirot's eyes locked onto him. "Monsieur Cope, you spoke of a deserted death decree. Your affection for Madame Nadine, did it drive you to act?" Cope's hands rose, defensive. "I wanted to help her, yes, but murder, never." Poirot turned to the family, his voice rising. "The clues, the locket, the note, the earring, the shawl, the key, the ring, the fabric, the needle, the syringe, they tell a story. Miriam was no ghost, but a memory, a sister, perhaps, lost to tragedy, her name etched in guilt." He paced, his cane a metronome. The note, "She knows too much," pointed to Mrs. Boynton's secrets. The belladonna, the digitalis, the syringe, these were tools, but whose hand wielded them? The woman in white, a figure crafted to terrify, was no mortal act. It was a mortal act, staged to break the chains of tyranny. Ginevra's eyes widened. "But the visions, they were so real." Poirot's gaze softened. "Mademoiselle, your mind, so fragile, was the perfect canvas for fear. But the truth lies elsewhere." He turned to Mrs. Boynton's tent, retrieving a small diary hidden beneath her cot. Its pages, written in her sharp hand, detailed a past scandal. A sister, Miriam, driven to despair by Eleanor's cruelty. Her death a suicide masked as accident. Madame Boynton carried this guilt, Poirot said, holding the diary aloft. But her death was no murder. The syringe, the puncture mark, they were her own doing. She administered the digitalis, a fatal dose, to free you all from her decree. Nadine gasped, tears welling. "She killed herself? Why?" Poirot's voice was gentle.
To end the cycle, madame. Her smile in death, it was peace, a final act of mercy. The woman in white, the whispers, these were her creations, a staged haunting to push you toward freedom. Lennox's voice broke. She trapped us, even in death. Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady. But you're free now. The decree is broken. Poirot nodded, his cane tapping a final note. The desert has spoken, mes amis. Its verdict is justice, cloaked in mercy. As the Jordanian authorities arrived, summoned by a runner, Poirot gathered the family at the treasury's feet, its facade glowing in the morning light. "You are released," he said, his voice resonant. "The chains are gone. Live and let Miriam's memory rest." The Boyntons stood together, their faces a mix of grief and relief. Ginevra's hum returned, soft and hopeful, as she gazed at the cliffs. Carol's bracelet fell to the sand, unneeded. Raymond opened his notebook, tearing out the sketches, letting them scatter. Nadine and Lennox clasped hands, their bond renewed. Cope, his role diminished, stepped back, his watch ticking softly. Sarah, an outsider no more, offered a quiet smile. Poirot tipped his hat, his little gray cells at rest. The desert's final verdict was complete, its secrets unveiled in a tableau of human frailty and redemption. As the sun crested, bathing the cliffs in crimson absolution, he walked away, the whispers silenced, the puzzle solved with elegant precision.